All right, thank you, and hello, everyone. This is Brian Frabel, Vice President of Marketing from Velo, and welcome to our second of a three-part series on marketing ROI. In both the second and the third part of the series, we are featuring case studies of companies that have tackled a challenging marketing question and looked at measuring ROI. And today I am very happy to have James Latham, CMO of ESI, here to join us. Let me introduce him a little bit, and then I'll hand the mic over to him. James is a guru when it comes to B2B marketing. He has been on both the agency and the client side. He has run global teams, been a GM, run alliance teams, and has worked with a who's who of big B2B brands, IBM, Microsoft, OpenText, and a whole lot more. And then James, in his spare time, in addition to being a soccer player, is also a board advisor for Cavario and us here at Velo. If you don't know anything about ESI, a little bit about them. They do highly technical, cutting-edge, laser-based systems, and they're used in the production of things like circuit boards, integrated circuit packaging, semiconductor wafer processing, and a whole lot of other applications. Highly technical, way over my head for sure. And ESI has been around for quite a few years and is a global brand. So as the CMO, James is managing all the global marketing. So James, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brian, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm real excited about being able to be here today and share kind of our little journey on how we're creating return on our marketing dollars. ESI, just one more thing I'll add to that part of the equation. If you think about the cell phone that's in your pocket, there's somewhere between 40 and 60 different kinds of processes that can only happen with laser technology. And so we provide the tools that these cell phone companies use to make the cell phones. So let's talk about kind of where we started. What were we facing? And as I mentioned, and Brian reiterated, very, very complex technical products, a company that is very focused on engineering. And as a result, as you might imagine, not much in the way of communicating the benefits and capabilities of the products from a business standpoint, but rather much more focused on the idea of speeds and feeds and precision and accuracy. And not that those are bad things, but really those are only part of the equation, because in the end, our customers are making things like cell phones and silicon wafers and chips. And so it's about the business of that technology. In addition to that, because most of these things are manufactured in China, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan, the market tends to move very, very quickly. So if you think of something like an iPhone 4 or an iPhone 3, it's very, very different than today's iPhone. And so those products get introduced every year at the least frequent, and sometimes more than once a year. And as a result, the kinds of capabilities that are required change very frequently. So it's a very difficult kind of pace to the marketplace. We've got a very geographically dispersed sales team with people in North America, in Western Europe, and then the bulk of our sales folks are situated in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and mainland China, as you might imagine. That's where those manufacturing floors are built, where the fabs are outfitted with the tools that are required to manufacture those piece parts, those circuits, and those chips. So when I joined ESI around 2 years ago, this geographically dispersed sales team was out there. They were calling on the different manufacturers, and regularly they'd have requests to the people that were the subject matter experts in these manufacturing tools. And so we'd get calls in the middle of the night, emails all during the nighttime to the content creators or the subject matter experts for a PowerPoint deck or an explanation of a particular feature or function or a positioning for a particular product. And as a result, there was this constant stream of really reactionary ad hoc requests and then answers flowing all around the world. And then, of course, when a sales rep gets a piece of content like a slide or a set of slides or a product data sheet that they liked or that was working for them or that they were able to translate and use effectively, they'd create their own version of that. And as a result, our key positioning messages were getting diluted and evolving in the field sort of organically instead of our being able to manage those messages and evolve them according to market demand and our overall strategy. Any questions on that, Brian?
No, I think, I know we talked to quite a few of high-tech companies, and we hear the same sort of challenges from them, and that, as you said, salespeople grab their favorite piece, they customize it, and you as a marketer have no idea whether they're using the latest branding, messaging, et cetera. So I think your challenge was very common to high-tech industry.
Yeah, I see that across the board. And so, when I joined, I'm responsible for brand, for lead generation, for field marketing, across the board, corporate marketing and messaging. And one of the things I did was first go into this job with trying to get a really good understanding of what was really valuable. What's the brand promise for ESI? And how do those products manifest that brand promise? And then put in place a messaging hierarchy, as you would do, that had really clear content that we wanted to use to challenge the current state of thinking of our customers and to provide a solutions framework for them. And so we put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resources towards creating this content and building this positioning and messaging. And that was an effort and an investment that we needed to pay off by having that consistent message and content communicated effectively to people, whether they were in Tokyo or Taiwan. And we also, on the other side, we wanted to form a bridge from a corporate or central marketing standpoint between our salespeople, widely dispersed, reactive, in the moment, and our product managers and product marketing who are really thinking through how is this position going to make a difference, be differentiated, and be highly competitive. So that positioning was really, really important for us in order to maintain a competitive edge. And then finally, these product managers and product marketers in Portland or wherever they sit were in fact getting these a lot of their work, sometimes 30% of their day would be spent creating new content to react to these ad hoc requests, as I explained before. And so one of the things that we decided as a management team was that's way too much time for those folks to be sort of recreating the wheel. We wanted to get really good positioning, really good messaging, and codify that in the right set of content elements that were most useful to the sales group.
James, was this effort a top-down type of program, or did your field reps feel the same pain, or did you have to do something to convince them that there was a problem in the first place?
Well, one of the things I did was, first and foremost, was to go out, travel around to all those countries, meet with the salespeople face to face, and try and understand kind of their sales process and what they were doing. And I uncovered a fair bit of frustration on the ground, in the field, and that was related to frustration around, did they have the right tools? Did they have the most recent message? Did they have to wait for 24 hours or longer to get the most recent PowerPoint deck or data sheet, et cetera? And if you think about, all of those countries that I described, they're, 12, 14, 15, 16 hours ahead. So if they have a meeting on Monday morning and they think about all their content that they're going to present, and it's Friday night their time or Saturday, they're working on the weekend, they're not going to get a turnaround for that piece of content by Monday morning their time. So this time lag was exacerbated by, of course, time zones and the weekends. So that was a big frustration for the salespeople. They were really, I won't say angry, but they were frustrated. And as a result, we kind of put in place a series of tasks that would satisfy those frustrations from the salespeople. So I would say partly it was pure grassroots. The demand from the salespeople for great content that was going to be effective and, in fact, was supporting the corporate messages was very, very rampant. It was pent-up demand. And on the other hand, we saw all of this wasted time from a management standpoint. So we definitely had a management remit to say, let's get our messaging aligned, let's get it right, and then let's get it out there in a consistent, repeatable manner.
Yeah, it's interesting that oftentimes you hear sales say, I can't find the content, I can't get it when I need it, which sounds like you guys had that problem. And then marketing says on the other side, sales isn't using the right content, they're using outdated messaging and things like that. And so it's interesting that as you kind of did your sleuthing, and why don't you tell us more about how you solved the problem, but one solution solves both parties' problems.
Yeah, and in fact, that's a very good point, Brian, because if I think about the product managers, the people who are really understanding the market requirements, both from a technology and a business standpoint, understanding the materials that those laser tools have to work on, they had a similar, although converse, kind of frustration in that they had spent all this time, and I'm talking, man years of time, creating specifications, marketing requirements, and then building tools for these markets, and then losing that pinpoint, powerful message to, this dispersed sales group, and that message was evolving, and so it wasn't static. It was something that needed to be refreshed. It needed to take into account new competitors entering the field and existing competitors putting forth new messages into the marketplace that we had to countermand or react to. But we wanted to do that in a very well-thought, expert, and consistent manner.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what do we do. First of all, we really dug in and understood the challenges. And then we said, okay, how are we going to really solve those two converse issues, if you will? And the first thing we did is said, okay, we've got to first identify our approach. And so we kind of thought about a push-pull kind of approach for information, a consistency and repository of that information. And then ease of use was a really important piece of the puzzle, because we didn't want to spend tons of time training our sales reps, nor training the product managers to get content in and content out. In addition, there's a security concern because some of our information was very proprietary, and we wanted to keep it sort of under wraps. So we needed a tool that allowed us to set different access controls, different regional repositories, if you will, because the guy in Japan selling a certain kind of tool doesn't really need the same kind of information as our folks in mainland China. It's a very different kind of market. So we wanted to create regionalized information repositories, if you will. And then again, I have a very small team in marketing. We weren't going to fly people all around the world to and from Taiwan and Tokyo and Shanghai, but rather we wanted to be able to touch those people, communicate with them, and get them up to speed very quickly. So ease of use was really important to us. The ability for them to use it on whatever device. So some of them have laptops, but most in China, for example, almost exclusively use their smartphones. So we put in place, the way we started was we worked with the sales management, the regional sales managers, and the salespeople, and we identified two really important key audiences. And we chose these audiences because of their enthusiasm, the demand that they had previously articulated, and their commitment to the program. And those audiences were the salespeople, a subset of the salespeople in Taiwan, and the entire sales team in Korea. So we did a pilot program with these, and they really became enthusiastic adopters. In fact, we had slated the pilot, I think, originally for 6 weeks. We completed the pilot in less than 3 weeks. And in that pilot, we tested things like, do we need to translate content to a local language, or should we put it out there just in English? What kind of devices they were using, what kind of speed they were getting on downloads and access to the repository. All of those kind of things went into the pilot evaluation. And as I mentioned, we finished the pilot early because the adoption rate was 100% in our target audiences, and they started talking about it to the other salespeople in other regions. So it became its own sort of it built its own momentum with the salespeople, and our limited pilot was then, I think, in a way, the demand was so great, we just said, okay, we're ready to open it up because we've got this capability. So after just 2 weeks in the pilot, we opened the doors, and we did that because of this demand. And I think also we had built confidence in our platform that we had built using Velo, and the content itself was robust enough to make it valuable right away. And I think those are two things that really helped us get that sort of that rapid adoption. The content was consistent. It reflected sort of the bill of materials that the salespeople were crying out for. So we built to fit, so to speak, and then we put that bill of materials as a consistent way of communicating as a standard within the Velo platform, so that every time a new product came out, they would initially get these 6 pieces of information, a PowerPoint deck on positioning, a PowerPoint deck on the market, a data sheet, et cetera. And then later on, they would get 12 additional pieces of information, including some video and additional detailed technical specifications. So in that way, those adopters, the people in Korea and those in Taiwan, became very, very vocal and sort of helped drive the overall adoption across the entire field sales force.
James, would you say you have a lot less people now creating their own individual presentations that you had talked about in the beginning?
There's no question that I think for 2 reasons, Brian. One is it's really easy and fast for them to get the latest deck because it's always there on the repository. It's always available. It's available 24/7. So they can be walking into a meeting, literally standing on the sidewalk outside, and download it to their laptop or their the thing that they probably use more often is a large format smartphone or an iPad kind of device, a tablet, and they'll just download the most recent one. So they already have it. They've got it there. They can take it inside, and then they can share it with their customer. So in that regard, they really prefer the most recent, most up-to-date information. And I think that has that's partially the reason why they're creating less of their own content. And then again, I think the process, the standards we put in place help them understand that any product that gets put into the Velo platform will have a minimum set that they can always count on. So they don't have to do all that research. They don't have to ping the product manager every time. They can literally just go and they'll know those 6 core pieces of content are always there.
Yeah, I imagine it saved them a ton of time, too. That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the results and what you guys have tracked so far?
Yeah, so as part of our pilot, we put in some criteria, and there was qualitative criteria and quantitative, meaning usage statistics. And all of these reports, as you know, Brian, they come directly from the Velo platform. So we don't have to compile any kind of separate metrics or separate measurements. We use the statistics reported out from the platform as our goals and as our metrics by which we measure success. And we built a ramp up in terms of our goals. We shared that with a sort of a mini sales enablement dashboard that we put in front of that I put in front of the exec team on a monthly basis and in front of the board of directors on a quarterly basis. And we established some sort of key goals. And the first of those, of course, we know that the value of this thing is in its usage. So we tracked every salesperson's every single touch. Well, we tracked. The Velo platform tracks all the touches for all the content for all the users that are registered. And so we put in goals that quickly ramped from in January of last year of 2015 to April. We ramped from 50% to 80% of our sales force using the content on a monthly basis. So 8 out of 10 people have to touch 1 or more pieces of content every month for us to meet that goal. And that goal, is conversely related to the content rating. So we ask the salespeople, do you want better content? Yes, of course they do. Then rate the content that's out there. And so we got ratings almost every time the first time they touched the content. They'd rate it, star rating 1 to 5. And our goal was to have that content rating consistently increase, get to a point where it's 3 or more stars, and that every additional piece of content, if it was rated less than 3 stars, we had a conversation with the product manager, the product marketer, whoever created it, about figuring out what's wrong with that piece of content that it's not getting the right rating. So we think quality drives usage and ultimately value for the content itself. So the content itself is really, really important. And then we also think, we also believe, and it's been borne out by our hypothesis testing, is that, we had this steadily increasing goal to first get that minimum pieces of content on for all our existing products and then all the new products, and then expand that to this new 12-point bill of materials for each of the products. And so content volume, the amount of content out there, helped drive the usage, because their new piece of content would show up. They'd get an email that said, hey, there's new content on the platform. They'd either click through or make a note of it and click through later to take a look at it, because they're always looking for what's new from headquarters in Portland, even when they're, out there in Wuhan or Shanghai or Beijing trying to talk to, contract manufacturers or people building cell phones. So more content, again, drives usage, and that's where we gain the value of the platform and the return on the investment we made in that platform and the process and the people that we invest in to get that content organized and delivered to the field.
So it sounds like you've really solved that challenging problem that faces a lot of product marketers, which is, I know I have a lot of content that's not working. I just don't know which are working, which aren't.
That's exactly right. And that was part of our issue because we had repositories on SharePoint. We have shared drives that could be looked at and accessed by the salespeople through our VPN. So there were a lot of places where content existed, but no way to really understand what was being used and then what value it was accruing to that individual salesperson or the sales team at large. So I think the idea of getting the right content and vetting that content before we even put it into the Velo platform was a very effective and important part of the process. We didn't just say everything goes into Velo. We said, okay, we're going to hit those 6 key bill of material elements that are most important to the salespeople and follow it up with the 6 more that are supporting elements that they also desire.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Any thoughts about where you're going to go next? You've been on it for about a year, I believe, right?
That's exactly right. We just came up on our year at the end of January. And so we're building, our fiscal year starts in April. So we've got a corporate marketing dashboard that goes to the exec team again every month that includes sales enablement. And it goes to the board of directors every quarter. So I stand up to the board and say, this is what we're doing to increase effectiveness and efficiency in the sales teams. We're going to revisit that and look at other kinds of reporting that we get from Velo and try and set ourselves more advanced goals, more aggressive goals for the sales effectiveness measurements. And so we're in the midst of that, Brian, so we haven't settled in on anything, but we'll be rolling that out in just another month or so.
Awesome. Well, I guess I'll just sign you up for a webinar a year from now so you can tell us how those aggressive goals went.
Yeah, happy to share that as I am today's talk, because I'll tell you, this thing has made a big difference, and it was really a problem that was irking, I think, the salespeople, the product managers, the business unit general managers, and certainly the CEO and the exec team. We talked about it many times before we settled on an approach.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys have been able to use it to your advantage. Why don't I conclude with a couple of thoughts, and James, please jump in here if you have any comments. But both from what you just talked about and things we hear from our other customer, one of the key things in implementing something like this is you need to make sure you show value to sales. I think, tops down, use this system and change your behavior, but there's no value in it for you to a salesperson. That's almost a guarantee for success. You have to sell the value to them.
I think that's absolutely right, Brian. And I think that, that starts with really understanding that sales process and what elements or what types of content they use, and focusing in on those high impact elements. Those are the key things that are going to become initially very visible. And I think that's helped us a lot.
Yeah. And then I think your approach to launching with the early adopters and letting the enthusiasm, because if what you're doing truly adds value to the sales teams, they'll talk amongst themselves. And it sounds like you guys had to do very little marketing of it internally at all. It just kind of started virally.
That's true, and it was completely organic. And I don't know that I expected it to grow that way, but once it started, it was really fast, spread like wildfire.
Mm-hmm. And then I think, you yourself being involved in the executive staff, taking a look at regular dashboards is helpful. As I had a manager once tell me, you get what you measure. And so if the teams know you're measuring it and it's a priority, it will stay a priority for them as well.
Yeah, I think that helped a great deal for us because when I think back a year ago, not all the product managers were all that enthusiastic, but at the exec team level, meaning the general managers, the head of sales, myself as head of marketing, we all agreed that this was an important piece of the puzzle. And I think that helped, knowing what the measurements were, the metrics that we were going to examine every month, I think that helped get some of the naysayers sort of on board with the idea. And then, again, this usage statistic that showed up in every dashboard was kind of generated some enthusiasm amongst the product managers saying, they were proud of the fact that 80% of the salespeople were using their stuff every month.
Yeah, that's a good point. You get real-time feedback as a content creator. And then I think you guys did a great job with this last one, too, in tracking and refining with setting a goal of 3 stars for content. I'm sure you had some great conversations with your CEO about eliminating wasteful content and producing content sales teams are actually using.
Yeah, there were numerous conversations about that, and really that was part of the mystery that we finally were able to solve is like what content is really required in the field. And it's interesting because some of the stuff the salespeople asked for initially, our initial bill of materials, really didn't turn out to be that useful. They just thought they needed it, and so we've refined this over the course of time, and we'll continue obviously to evolve our metrics as we discussed.
Awesome. Well, having that visibility it's so valuable. Well, James, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. I want to thank everybody that was listening in. If you want to learn more about the fascinating products at ESI or follow James, he's interesting to follow on Twitter, I can say from personal experience. And, of course, we'd love to have you come and check us out at veloinc.com and follow us at Velo Inc. So, James, thanks again. A great story. For those of you that want to share this, we'll be posting. It will be up tomorrow on the web, and you can share it with your friends.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
It was great to get a chance to share that.
Great.